All right. In this video, we're going to talk about the brand new feature that Anthropic released for Claude called Skills, Agent Skills, Claude Skills, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to show you how it works, and I'm going to explain to you why you need it, how to use it, all of that stuff. So let's try this out. Make me a 4-page PowerPoint about the Eiffel Tower. This is what I'm going to send into the web app on Claude. And I want you to notice something here. I was thinking a little bit, and then as you can see here, it's reading the PowerPoint skill documentation. So this is a brand new thing that you may have noticed, and this did not exist previously. So if you try to do this maybe a couple of weeks ago, months ago, it would never have been able to do any of this. It would have said, well, I can't create PowerPoint presentations. I don't have the ability or the tools or whatever. And so the reason it can do this today is because of this new feature called Claude Skills that Anthropic just recently came out with. Now, what is a skill? Let's explain what that is, and then we'll come back and show you how this PowerPoint was made with that skill. So if you have a look at the blog on Anthropic's site, it explains it all, but I'm going to make it a lot easier because it's a little jargony over here. But essentially, a skill is a set of instructions that you may be giving to Claude over and over again. So if at work or in your personal life, you find yourself starting a new chat and giving it the same set of instructions over and over again, or the same context, that is potentially a use case for a skill. And the best analogy I can think of is like in the Matrix, where Neo gets plugged in, and then they teach him, what was it, Jujutsu Kung Fu, and then he wakes up and he's like, I know Kung Fu today, right? So essentially, it's kind of like it's really just a file that explains how to do a certain thing, and then it just gets added to Claude when you're chatting with it, as and when it's needed. And so creating a PowerPoint presentation, that's a skill where you can tell it, hey, here's the way I like to create PowerPoint presentations. I like this design. I like this tone of voice. I like to have XYZ thing. And then you give it that skill. And so next time you ask it to create a PowerPoint presentation, you don't need to repeat yourself. Claude will automatically just pull that skill and use instructions in there to generate your PowerPoint. And so if you've used ChatGPT's custom GPTs, it's kind of similar, right? With the custom GPT, you set it up with some instructions, you give it some knowledge base documents, and then every time you want a certain output or you want to, do a certain repeatable thing, you just go back to that custom GPT and do that over and over again, right? And so people have created, like, say, custom copywriting GPT, where it takes in some text and then it spits it out as a brand approved copywritten ad, right? And so that could be in Claude a skill. The difference between the two is with Claude Skills, it's way more extensible and customizable, to the point that you can also include code in your skill. And so you could tell it to run a piece of Python code in that skill, and it runs that code and does a bunch of like things, right? Generating graphs or images, or classifying something, whatever you want to do. So skills work across all of the Claude products, the web app, which is what I'm showing you in this video, as well as Claude Desktop and Claude Code. If you are familiar with Claude Code, and if you're not, you can watch my video on it. But if you are familiar with Claude Code, it's kind of similar to slash commands, where a slash command is just a text file with a bunch of like instructions of what to do. The only difference here is a slash command is something that you invoke and you tell Claude, hey, follow this slash command. Whereas with a skill, Claude just figures out that it needs to use a skill and it uses it. All right, let's go back to the thing I was showing you earlier. All right, so we are back to that initial chat where I asked Claude to create a PowerPoint presentation about the Eiffel Tower for me. And as you can see here, it used the built-in PowerPoint skill that Anthropic has created for Claude to do this. So it reads the documentation. So there's a set of instructions there. And then there's a set of related documents as well. So it's not just one document. It's like an overall instruction set, and then the HTML to PowerPoint documentation specifically to understand syntax and best practices, and then some CSS documentation. Once it has all of that, it then has to install and run some scripts, which is also in the instructions. And finally, according to the instructions, it has to create a presentation plan, an outline, and then using that, it then generates your CSS as well as slides in HTML, and then uses all of that together to convert that into an actual PowerPoint presentation, which you can see on the right-hand side over here. And so you've got this 4-slide thing that talks about the Eiffel Tower. Amazing. And it looks really great too. Now, this is built into Claude at this point, but you can create your own version of a PowerPoint skill where it runs according to your specific criteria. So let's say at work, you have to create presentations on a regular basis. One example I can think of, my cousin who works in sales has to create these sales decks for every client that he's pitching to. And it's kind of like it's the same outline, the same structure every single time, the same branding, but he has to do that a lot, right? So now he can just turn that into a skill where he just describes and gives it a few examples. And then every time he has a new client, he just says, hey, I've got a new client, create a PowerPoint, here's some information about the client. And then Claude will run that skill, generate this PowerPoint specifically for that. Let's have a look now at where you can set up skills if you're a Claude user, whether you're on the web app or the desktop. We go into the settings right now, set up a skill, and show you how to create your own skills as well. So if you head to settings here in the bottom left, you'll come over to this sort of setting panel here where you have to go to the capability section. And as you scroll down, you'll see the new skills section, right? And here's a bunch of other skills that Anthropic has created already as example skills. And then you can upload your own skill. So if you wanted to come here and play around with some of these skills, just like toggle it on like I've done with the Slack GIF or GIF creator, and then you can try it in chat, right? And so I'm just going to try that in chat here, and we're going to show you how it works. And then I'll show you after this how to create your own skills and upload them into Claude. So again, kind of similar to the way that I was creating the PowerPoint. It is first reading the documentation, and then now it's going to run a bunch of scripts or code that was in the documentation. And it uses Claude's sort of virtual environment here. So it's not using my desktop to do any of this. It's creating a virtual environment, it's running a bunch of this code in here. And looks like it's creating a cosmic galaxy animation with twinkling stars. So I'm excited to see how this turns out. As the skill documentation may have suggested, it's supposed to write all this code and then show it to me. And in a moment, I'm going to show you how the skill code actually works. So here's the skill, the Slack GIF creator skill in Anthropic's official GitHub profile. And as you can see here, it's really just a bunch of different documents. So here's the main document, the skill.md document. This is the document that describes the entire skill. It's got a name, a description, and a license up top. So the name is Slack GIF Creator, which we saw in our settings. And the description basically describes what the skill does. And so every time I start a chat with Claude, it gets the name, just the name and description in its chat context. So it knows it has this ability. So every time I tell Claude in a chat, any chat, hey, turn this content into a GIF, it knows to use the skill because it's got that in its chat context. And then it reads the full documentation. So this explains what it needs to do, how does it work, the structure. You have to use these validators, use this code to check to validate the size, the dimensions, all of that. Here's how you use animations. Here's all the different animations you can create, so on and so forth. So there's a bunch of code that is written over here. Now, if you're non-technical, don't worry. Like, your skills don't need to have this much code, and most skills could just be basic text documents, right? But in case you wanted to go further than, say, like a GPT, you wanted to get something that's really custom, you do need to add some code to it. So like I said, this is the main skill md.file, which you must have for every skill. And then optionally, you can have a bunch of other files. So in this case, they have some requirements of text files. So to run all the codes that we saw in skill md, you need to install a bunch of libraries. The license are text file, you can forget about that. Templates are essentially examples, like Python scripts as well, that the main skill md file can call upon. So if it decides it wants to generate a GIF that has some zoom animation, it would then call upon the zoom.py file to create that animation, right? And then finally, we've got another folder here, which is just a bunch of like core scripts around, validations, visual effects, and so on. Again, your skill doesn't need to have all of this code. And it doesn't even need to be in kind of the structure. As long as you have the skill.md file, you're good. And then if you needed additional scripts and instructions that you didn't want to put into the main skill.md file, you can create that as well. And then you got to package it up into one folder and zip it and upload it into Claude. Okay, so we're back in Claude over here, back to that chat where I tried out the Slack GIF creator. We just saw all the code for the Slack GIF creator, and here we've seen Claude create a sort of cosmic galaxy kind of GIF that like sort of expands and contracts. And so it's obviously used some of like the little Python scripts in there, like the creating the background gradient, creating the like the zooming in and out effect. It looks a little blurry right now because it's a GIF and it's supposed to be a lot smaller. Uh, but yeah, I assume if I took this and made it smaller, it would kind of look like a nice little thing I can like throw in my Slack for my teammates to see, right? And so back in our settings, we've already seen the Slack GIF creator. I urge you to go check your settings and look at some of these others, and you can see the code. If you click the Learn More button here, it'll pop up and it'll explain how these skills were created, and then it also links to the GitHub somewhere in here to show you. Yeah, here we go, the skills GitHub. So it shows you all the documentation for all of these skills. So if any of these skills appeal to you, go look at the documentation, see how it's created. And then if you want to create your own skill, you can sort of just copy the way that the skill is created, copy all the documents, write your own skill. And then, like I said, if you're not a coder, don't worry. You could just like write a plain text skill that, you know, writes, say, takes takes a city name and creates a travel itinerary, uh, taking into consideration the places that you like to visit. Like you're more of a artsy or cultural person. You give it a city name, it gives you an itinerary to do artsy and cultural stuff in that city. And then once you create that skill, click here, upload skill, and then just like drag and drop the zip file. And again, this link here, see an example, goes to the GitHub. So you can see some of the examples of how it's created. That was a brief primer on Claude Skills. Hopefully, I gave you an understanding of what it is, how it works, why you need it. And if you are looking to use Claude Skills, then I highly urge you to go and try out some of the skills in Anthropic's, in the Claude AI web interface. But if you want to build your own skills, Claude Skills, um, start with something simple. Just think about your day-to-day work, stuff that you do where you're repeating a lot of actions or you're prompting Claude the same way every single time, or ChatGPT or whatever AI you use. That could become a skill. And that could just be a very basic text-based skill. If you want something that's a little more complex, if you're non-technical and you want to build a skill that uses code and does a lot of other things, I've got a sort of free skill builder agent where I'm going to add the link below, but essentially just you answer a little form of like what kind of skill do you want, what should it do, how should it work, and then it automatically generates kind of like the skills.md and some of the code snippets and so on for you to use. So I'll add the link below, check it out, and I'm also going to add a link at some point, maybe not right now, to a blog post where I go into further detail on how you can create your own skills, various use cases for using skills, and the different things that you can start to automate now that skills is a new feature. Hope you enjoyed this. If you do, please like and subscribe. Thanks.